I remember the vividly. Grace was stranded on a dimly lit road, her headlights flickering like they were undecided about whether to keep going or give up. I had just wrapped up a long day and hopped on a bike, heading home. It was by sheer coincidence, or fate maybe, that I spotted her car by the roadside. Her silhouette, illuminated by the car's dim interior light, was unmistakable. "Auntie Grace?" I called out as I approached. Her face lit up with both relief and surprise. That was the night everything changed. Grace's story wasn't one I could have imagined being part of. When I first met her, she was so far out of my world that even speaking to her felt like something I had no right to do. I was Charles, the errand boy. At least, that's what Princess always called me. I didn't mind it much. I was hustling, trying to make a life for myself in Abuja. Jobless but determined, I took every opportunity that came my way, whether it was fixing electrical appliances or running errands. Grace, on the other hand, was everything I wasn't. Beautiful, successful, and confident, she carried herself with a poise that made people notice her. But it hadn't always been easy for her. Born and raised in Lagos to a disciplined Christian family, Grace was the epitome of a well-brought-up young woman. Her parents instilled values of hard work, humility, and faith. She excelled in her education, earning a master's degree and becoming a chartered accountant. She was the talk of the town, not just because of her brilliance but also because of her stunning beauty. Her smooth, caramel-toned skin, expressive eyes, and perfectly sculpted features turned heads everywhere she went. In university, she was the girl everyone admired from afar but very few dared to approach. In her office, she had the same effect. Colleagues would whisper about her, awestruck by her elegance and confidence. But Grace's beauty came with its challenges. Many men found her intimidating, too perfect to approach. This reality weighed heavily on her heart. She often confided in her close friends, questioning why her beauty seemed to chase men away. "Is being this fine a curse?" she'd ask, her voice tinged with frustration. Despite her success and charm, she sometimes felt her beauty created a barrier, making potential partners assume she was unapproachable or out of their league. Her mother and aunts often advised her to tone it down, to dress more simply, leave her car at home, and even use public transport to appear less sophisticated. Their concern was genuine. At 35, Grace was still single, and it wasn't for lack of trying. She'd dated a few men, but the relationships never lasted. The serious ones often turned out to be opportunists, interested more in her success than in her as a person. Heartbreak after heartbreak left her disillusioned. Her mother took her to countless pastors and prayer houses, hoping divine intervention would bring the right man into her life. But nothing worked. Among those she sought counsel from was her colleague Philip, a senior at her office and a part-time pastor. One day, over a casual conversation, she shared her struggles with him. "Pastor Philip, please pray for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I need God to send the right man into my life." Philip smiled kindly. "Grace, I'll pray, but I want you to be open to what God might reveal. Sometimes, the answer is closer than we think." A few days later, Philip came to her with a message. "Grace, I've been praying, and I feel led to tell you this. The man meant for you will come to your aid when you least expect it, in a moment when you are stranded and need help. He may not appear polished at first, but he will be the one." Grace tucked the words away in her heart, unsure what to make of them. When she was promoted and transferred to Abuja to head a branch office, Grace saw it as a fresh start. In Abuja, she made friends with two women her age, Princess and Faith, who were also single and working professionals. They became her closest companions, spending weekends together and supporting each other in the absence of family. It was through Princess that Grace first met me, Charles. I'd met her a few times while helping Princess out with odd jobs. She was polite, always saying thank you with a smile that could make anyone's day better. But that was all, until that night. Her car had a minor issue. I adjusted the battery cable, and the engine roared back to life. It wasn't a big deal, but the way she looked at me afterward made me feel like I'd just saved the world. "Thank you so much, Charles," she said. "It's nothing, Ma," I replied, stepping back and dusting my hands. She insisted on giving me a ride home, and as we drove, we talked more than we ever had before. She asked about my life, my dreams, and my struggles. I was honest. I told her about the job hunt, the side gigs, and the endless hustle. For the first time, I saw something different in her eyes. Interest, maybe even respect. That night, as she lay in bed, Philip's words echoed in her mind. Could Charles be the man the pastor had spoken of? He had come to her aid when she was stranded. The thought lingered, and for the first time, she began to see Charles in a new light. The next weekend, she invited me over for lunch. I'd never been invited to her house before, and to say I was nervous would be an understatement. But as we talked over plates of jollof rice and grilled chicken, the tension melted away. She was easy to talk to, and for some reason, she seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. "You're really smart, Charles," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I don't understand why someone like you is still struggling to find a good job." I shrugged. "It's just the way things are. But I'll keep pushing. Something will come through eventually." She smiled, and for the first time, I felt something shift between us. When she told her friends about us, the reactions were mixed. Faith laughed it off, thinking it was a joke. Princess, on the other hand, wasn't amused. "Charles? That errand boy," she scoffed. "Grace, you're joking, right?" Grace didn't back down. "He's not just an errand boy, Princess. He's a hardworking, intelligent man. And I like him." Princess rolled her eyes. "You're too good for him. Trust me, you'll regret this." But Grace didn't regret it. If anything, the criticism seemed to strengthen her resolve. We started spending more time together, and the more I got to know her, the more I realized how special she was. She wasn't just beautiful and smart, she was kind, humble, and deeply compassionate. She made me want to be better. For her, for myself, for our future. Things weren't always easy. My lack of a steady job was a sore point, especially when it came to meeting her family. Her mother was polite but distant, and her aunts didn't bother hiding their skepticism. "He seems nice, but what does he do?" one of them asked her when they thought I wasn't listening. Grace's answer was simple but firm. "He's working on it. And I believe in him." Her faith in me was both humbling and motivating. I doubled down on my efforts, sending out countless applications and taking every gig I could find. Around that time, Grace's colleague Philip, who was also a part-time pastor, stepped in. He'd always been a mentor to her, and he took it upon himself to help me. Through his connections, I landed an entry-level job at a friend's company. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A year later, I proposed. I didn't have much, just a modest ring and a heart full of hope. But when I got down on one knee, Grace's eyes filled with tears, and she said yes before I could even finish asking. The road to our wedding wasn't smooth. My family had their reservations, mostly about the age difference and Grace's status. But over time, they came to see what I'd known all along. Grace was incredible. She treated everyone with kindness and respect, and she loved me wholeheartedly. Today, we have 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl. Our life isn't perfect, but it's ours, and it's filled with love. Sometimes, I think back to that night on the lonely road and wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stopped. But then I remind myself that some things are meant to be. Grace wasn't just my miracle, she was my partner, my rock, and my greatest blessing. And to anyone who ever doubted us, well, let's just say we're too busy living our happily ever after to care.